Go ahead.
All right, so the three topics that we're gonna cover today is which websites need a privacy policy, why privacy policies are so important, and why you should be the one to talk to your clients about privacy. But before we start, a little bit about us. So we met all of you. My name is Donata, and I'm a privacy and technology attorney, and I'm a certified information privacy professional. I'm the vice chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee and the chair of the Chicago chapter of the International Association of Privacy Professionals. I'm the president of Termageddon, which is a software that generates privacy policies, and I'm the legal engineer behind the policy questionnaires and text, and I'm also responsible for keeping the policies up to date with changing laws.
My name is Hans. I am the vice president of Termageddon. Prior to Termageddon, I was running a 12-person web design agency in downtown Chicago, but I sold that company early last year to focus all my time on the Termageddon business. Outside of Termageddon, I really like speaking with people in physics. So Trevor, I'm looking at you. I like speaking to people about philosophy. Yeah, I like to fish and be outside with my chickens and my bees. Yeah,
and we're married, by the way. That's why we have the same last name.
Yeah. And before we jump into any future pages, I just want to note, today we are not providing legal services. Termageddon is not a legal service provider.
Yeah, and we're not providing legal advice either. Okay. All right, so part one, what websites need to have a privacy policy? So I know that there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So some people will think that websites that share personal information need to have one, websites that sell personal information. Some people think that e-commerce websites need to have one, and that the rest are free and clear. And unfortunately, that's not true. So for the first part, we'll kind of give you some tips on how to quickly identify a website that needs to have a privacy policy. All right, so there's only one definition in this talk, but it is a very important one, and that's personally identifiable information, otherwise referred to as PII. So PII is any data that could identify someone. And great examples of PII are names, emails, phone numbers, and physical addresses. In addition to that, IP addresses are also PII. So anything that collects that is PII. So any website that has a contact form collects personally identifiable information, or PII. So the same goes with any forms that you build where somebody could submit their PII. So like newsletter sign up forms, account registration forms, payment forms, or order forms, stuff like that. So anywhere on a website that has a form is collecting PII. And any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. So notice that I didn't say share, sell, I didn't even say use, it's just collects. So the moment the website has a form and the moment that it collects PII, that's when you need to have a privacy policy. So the next time you're building a website for your clients, or if you're working on your own website, take a look through the pages, see what forms there are, see what PII they collect. So if you are building a website with a contact form, that's when the light bulb should go off in your head, saying, this website needs to have a privacy policy. And that was it for part one. Part two is, why does PII collection and privacy matter? And I think maybe it's important to take a little history lesson here. And I'm not gonna go back to like the year 1000. Don't worry about that.
Aww.
Yeah, that's later. I'll tell you that over dinner tonight.
Is this real? Are you for real?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not doing that. I don't have time for that. So let's take a look. If you think about when you were first starting to build websites, or when you were building websites 5 or 10 years ago, privacy policies weren't really a conversation that like anyone had. apart from lawyers and people in tinfoil hats. Basically, that's all there was. And then the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke. So I'm sure most of you are aware of that, but basically what happened is the firm Cambridge Analytica scraped a bunch of PII off of Facebook profiles. And that was done without consent. And because that scandal broke, a lot of consumers started to become interested in their privacy. You know, they felt like it wasn't fair that their PII was being scraped, that it was being used for political advertisements, targeting without their consent, things like that. And basically consumers became a lot more interested in their privacy and what happens to their PII online. And consumers started pressuring their legislators to propose and pass privacy laws. And even though the Cambridge Analytica scandal involved two really large companies that make millions of dollars every year, unfortunately, small businesses got caught up in this regulatory net. So consumers didn't distinguish between really large companies collecting your PII and using it for political advertisements versus a small business collecting PII and selling jewelry. Which is very unfortunate, but essentially what happened is small businesses got caught up in the net. So why does PII collection and privacy matter? Privacy laws regulate the collection and use of PII. So because of consumer interest, privacy laws were passed, and privacy laws regulate how websites collect PII and what they do with it. And privacy laws require websites to disclose what PII is collected, what is done with that PII, and who the PII is shared with. And those disclosures are made in the privacy policy. So privacy policy is basically a document that has all of the disclosures that the privacy laws that apply to you require you to disclose. And just to be clear, these 3 points aren't all that a privacy policy is. So you can't just write a privacy policy that has these 3 disclosures and think that you're fine. These are just the meat and potatoes of it. So privacy laws can require you to make some disclosures that are a lot more specific and obscure than that. So for example, like a toll-free number where consumers can opt out of the sale of PII, or an email where consumers can exercise their privacy rights or what privacy rights they have. So privacy policies can get long and complicated, but these are the main points of a privacy policy, the meat and potatoes of that. So when we look at privacy laws, there are some privacy laws out there. So General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, that one was the terror of everyone back in May of 2018 and still a terror for some to this day. And that's a privacy law that protects the privacy of European Union residents. We have 2 privacy laws in California, CALOPA and the California Consumer Privacy Act. CALOPA is very special in the sense that it has an extremely broad application. So any website that can collect the PII of California residents needs to comply with CALOPA. And you know, that could be anyone, because anyone from anywhere could submit a contact form to your site. So virtually every modern website needs to comply with CALOPA, which I think is interesting. Not a lot of people know that. The California Consumer Privacy Act is new. It was recently amended by a new law, the California Privacy Rights Act. So that one's going to change. The name is going to change very soon. Nevada has a privacy law, Delaware has a privacy law, and Canada has a privacy law as well. And Canada's PIPETA, as Hans mentioned earlier, could potentially be changing very soon. There's a new proposal out there for a new bill, and that one provides consumers with a lot more privacy rights. And what I think is very interesting is that it would allow consumers to sue businesses directly for violations. And maybe Hans can touch on the fact that these laws have a broad application.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to cheat and see my next slide. Okay. All right. So
I remember my first presentation.
So I think it's very important to understand that everyone in this meeting right now, well, I guess there is one person from Toronto, but I think everyone else, oh, there's one person from Connecticut. Okay. Anyways, most people in this meeting right now are probably thinking to themselves, well, I'm not located in these areas, so therefore these privacy laws don't apply to me, so I can just go take a nap. And as much as you may want to go take a nap, I do want to note that
I want to go take a nap.
I do want to note that privacy laws are out to protect the residents, citizens, or people of a certain state, country, or continent. They could care less about where the business is located. Every single privacy law cares to protect the citizens, residents of that area. So you don't have to necessarily be located in the European Union. You don't necessarily have to be located in California or Nevada or Delaware for those privacy laws to apply to you. And that's what makes this very interesting, is that we, whether we like it or not, are entering into an era where if you have a website, people can inquire from anywhere, and therefore, in theory, don't you have to comply with virtually every privacy law, which to me, I think is a bit ridiculous for a small business to have to do that, but that's where we're at, and that's what the trend is looking like, and I'll be speaking about a trend shortly here.
Yeah, and when you think about privacy law application, it's really about whose PII you're collecting. So where are those visitors coming from? Where you do business, so like where is your office located, where do you have employees, and where your customers reside. Because when you enter into a contract with a customer in another state, you're technically could be subject to these privacy laws as well, because at that point you have like sufficient connections to the state because you're servicing somebody there. That one's particularly important for Nevada's privacy law too. In terms of what happens if you don't comply with privacy laws, so penalties for not complying range from $2,500 per violation to 20 million euros or more in total. And when it comes to what per violation means, it's not per website, it's not per policy. It's actually per person whose privacy rights you infringed upon. So for example, if you have 100 visitors from California to your website this month, that fine could potentially be 2,500 times 100, which can add up very, very quickly.
On this page, we're not expecting you to read it in depth right here, but we do provide, or I guess I don't provide a link in this presentation, but I can add it to the chat if you're interested. It's on our blog. This is our spreadsheet where we monitor privacy bills that currently exist in the US. So unlike the European Union, which set aside one privacy law to protect all residents of the European Union, in America, we don't have a single federal bill protecting the rights of Americans. We have individual states proposing their own privacy bill or bills to protect their residents or citizens. And herein lies the craziness of this, which is, as you'll see in the first column, we've listed every state. In column 2, we've listed the bill citation. Every single row is a bill that has been proposed on a state level to protect the rights of people within those states. And as you'll note, New York takes the lion's share. 2 of their privacy laws or privacy bills will enable citizens to sue businesses. And both of these privacy bills, if passed, will require you to update your privacy policy with new disclosures. So as you'll see from column 4 on, that we identify, various things, and to save time here, I'm not going to go through each one, but the first column 5 is privacy policy changes. So down the line, every single one of these would require a privacy policy change. The next column is business size limit. So some of these privacy laws do say, hey, if you're bigger than this amount, maybe a certain revenue threshold or something like that, then you have to comply with this law. But as you'll see, many, if not most, could care less about the size of the business. So anyways, yeah, you can feel free to look through this at a later time, or you can message me and I can send you a link to the deal. Really, the main message of this slide is that there are not only existing privacy laws in America that you may need to comply with, there's privacy laws in the world that you may need to comply with. And on top of that, there are more coming. Some of these are pretty intense. Staying aware of it, I think, is step number 1. Well, being aware of it is step number 1. And then having a strategy to, update your privacy policies when the laws change would be my biggest suggestion for everyone to consider in today's presentation.
Yeah, and maybe if I can just chime in here
Please,
too.
please.
So all of these bills would apply outside of the states in which they were passed.
Thank you.
So if you're located in New York, you might need to comply with New Jersey's bills. You might need to comply with Hawaii's bills. And the point of these bills is to provide consumers with certain rights. So for example, the right to access the PII that you hold about them, the right to delete the PII that they don't want you to have anymore, things like that. So they impose quite a few obligations on businesses. And when it comes to consumers being able to sue businesses directly, if some of you have been tracking the Americans with Disabilities Act, once it became clear that consumers could sue businesses directly and win, those lawsuits exploded, and we've seen like hundreds and hundreds of them coming out every year. So the prediction is if one of these bills that allows consumers to sue passes, we'll see a high increase in litigation when it comes to privacy as well. And when it comes to litigation, most attorneys try to go on the path of least resistance, like what is the easiest to prove? And the easiest proof, and a lot of advertising bureaus talk about this, the easiest proof is if you have a contact form and don't have a privacy policy, because it's very clear, here's the requirement and you didn't meet it. That's an open and shut case. So people are predicting that that's where we'll see the initial surge of lawsuits is on websites that have this very clear violation. Apart from privacy bills and fines and lawsuits and all of that, there's really other reasons for caring about privacy. So consumers are more vigilant than ever about the collection, use, and sharing of their PII. That's been since the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and privacy concerns are actually driving consumer behavior online as well. And consumers will use the services and products that don't abuse their rights and will leave platforms or websites or services that do. So caring about privacy can gain a competitive edge. And then a study by Cisco found that privacy concerns can slow down the sales cycle by an average of 7.8 weeks. That can be a lot, especially for smaller businesses. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then lastly, at least in some people's opinion, including mine, privacy is a fundamental human right, or should be. And I really think it's important that we don't abuse it. So as consumers ourselves, we expect businesses not to abuse our privacy either. Like if I talk about a certain item that I want to purchase in my living room, I don't want to see an ad for it on Facebook then 1 minute later, because that's just creepy. And people can tell when their privacy is being infringed upon. So it's important to treat people the way you'd want to be treated. So think about how you feel about your own privacy and take that feeling to your privacy practices. And then for our last part, we're going to discuss why you should be the one to talk to your clients about privacy. Some of you might be thinking, well, all right, great. This website needs to have a privacy policy. That's kind of my client's problem. Why should I be the one to talk to them about it? So maybe Hans can take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I will. And for those of you who manage, multiple websites or, that you own yourself, I think there's still some really good pieces of information here. But for people who do build websites for clients, I especially suggest, just paying attention to this. I'm speaking to you as someone who used to run an agency. I'm speaking to you as someone who built countless WordPress websites and who used to copy and paste privacy policies for my clients. And I stopped doing that once I, started dating a privacy attorney. But upon learning everything, I couldn't help but think, man, more people need to be aware of this. So this next part for web agencies, but in general, I think people will benefit from this. So if you build websites for clients and you are building a contact form for them or installing Google Analytics for them, you may be building technologies that, until you've heard this conversation, unknowingly force your client into complying with multiple privacy laws. And rather than trying to avoid having the conversation about privacy, I encourage you to have the conversation with them, because you might not be aware of what, or you might be forcing your client's hand. And by not bringing it up in the first place, like, hey, you should look into adding a privacy policy to your website, you're doing your clients a disservice by ignoring it. So the first thing I want to note is it makes you look proactive and professional rather than reactive and unprepared. The fact is, you can have privacy policies that comply with existing privacy laws. That is a part of how it works right now, is that privacy laws already exist and you already may need to be required to comply with them. On top of that, there's a lot more privacy bills that have been proposed. So you have a wonderful opportunity to showcase that knowledge to your clients now. Improve client retention and loyalty. You might be thinking, oh, this is like a soft strength, but I actually consider this one of the most important strengths. Time and time again, what built my relationships with clients was my ability to answer tough questions that they didn't know the answer to. Typically on the technical side, but sometimes not at all. And sometimes graphic design related, sometimes there's a whole spectrum when it comes to web design for a client. So by you providing insights and providing help and guidance to a client, it doesn't have to be legal advice. You never have to present yourself as a privacy attorney just to say, I think privacy policies are important. But it does improve client retention and loyalty, because little things like this, little pieces of help for your client, demonstrate to your client that you know what you're talking about. You go on, Monday nights and attend communities to learn more and stuff like that. Helps you stand above your competition. I mean, if you take all else equal, 2 website proposals for a client, and one website proposal talks about the importance of privacy policies and what's going on, and then the other proposal doesn't acknowledge privacy policies, even though both sites are building contact forms, analytics, and all these other tools, who would you, the client, choose? Well, I would, without a doubt, choose the one that was talking about privacy versus the one who doesn't have a clue about it. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but if anyone disagrees, I'd love to chat about it. Can help document and protect your own agency. This is a really key feature. So you're in the business of helping companies collect personal information by building contact tools and analytics platform or system integrations for your clients. You need to, it has nothing to do with Termageddon. Hopefully this is educational. That's certainly our intention. Like, you don't have to do Termageddon to get it documented with your clients that you discuss the importance of privacy policies. In your mind, you should be thinking, I'm helping my client collect personal information. I'm going to suggest a privacy policy, and get it documented that you have that discussion, because when it's all said and done, it's up to your client to comply with privacy laws, unless you've gone into some sort of contract with them, but you shouldn't go into a contract saying you'll be offering privacy compliance. But documenting it is the best way to just protect your own agency, whether your client decides whether or not they want to add one for themselves.
Yeah, and you don't have to, rattle off every single privacy law that's out there or explain the requirements. The only thing that you really need to say is, hey, we built you this website. It has this form. That form is collecting PII. And I think you need a privacy policy. And I think you should look into this. And that's it. And hopefully you do that in writing so that you can prove it later on if you need to. But it doesn't have to be a complicated 30-hour conversation. You can just say that simple sentence and then let them figure it out. So when should you tell your clients about privacy policies, Hans?
So I love the idea of including it in quotes, because I think that's a wonderful way to showcase that you are well-versed and you know more than just how to build a good-looking website. How many people here have thought to themselves, oh, I want the prettiest website, or their clients have said, oh, I want the prettiest website, when in reality, you peel back the onion far enough and they actually just want more business, and they think a pretty website will get there. But as we all know, you can't just end up on a website. You have to somehow be found. So quoting a project, I think, is a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge of what I just shared there, as well as your knowledge of privacy and the importance of privacy policies for websites.
Yeah, and when you're quoting out like the pages that you're building or the number of pages that you're building, you can add a privacy policy page in there as a great way to start the conversation too.
Yep, and charge a setup fee, of course, for your time to implement that. Now, that being said, a lot of people are amidst projects, And maybe you want to have this discussion before you launch the site. I would say that's the second best option is, before launch, just let your client know, hey, during our project together, it's now set up so that you're collecting personally identifiable information. You should look to getting a contact or a compliant privacy policy added to your website. Lastly, in maintenance plans, if you're offering ongoing maintenance, this is a wonderful time to proactively discuss the growing importance of privacy policies. Privacy laws already exist, and to comply with laws, businesses have to disclose, whatever they need to disclose if they need to comply with any number of them. But on top of that, there are a multitude of privacy bills that have been proposed. So this is that wonderful time where you can proactively communicate this type of value offer to your client.
Right before SHTF?
Yeah. I don't think you're allowed to say that in presentations.
It's an acronym.
The biggest one out of it all is really about protecting yourself and your own agency. If you are offering professional web design services to clients, it's up to the client to decide what they want on their website, what they want to disclose on their website. So really more than anything, I have to emphasize, just have to stop avoiding the conversation about privacy, have the conversation about privacy, because you're going to be doing your client a favor, not a disfavor. They need, if you aren't going to tell them to be aware about privacy laws, who will be the one to tell them? So tell them about it and get it documented that you had the discussion, because even if a client chooses not to have a privacy policy, getting it documented so that you at least protected your own agency, got documentation saying, okay, they didn't want one, I have it, I have something to refer back to. That's the best thing you can do ultimately for your own business.
Yeah, and then lastly, where do you get a privacy policy? So you really have two options, privacy attorneys and generators. So while I wouldn't ask your estate lawyer how to write a privacy policy, I would make sure to talk to somebody who specifically works in privacy. So privacy attorneys can write a privacy policy for you or for your clients. It's usually a pricier option, but it's a great option for people who have really big clients or clients that need special compliance. So for example, like clients who need HIPAA compliance or clients who collect PII from children under the age of 13. Attorneys are a great option for them. If you can't afford an attorney, generators are a great option too. So a generator is a software that will ask you a series of questions about your privacy practices and then use your answers to create a privacy policy for you. Generators are usually faster and a more cost-effective solution and can work well for the majority of your small business clients.
But generators, like this presentation, are not legal service providers. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a set of frequently asked questions, but actually I was thinking maybe we could bring it back to the floor to see if anybody has these specific questions or any other questions that we can answer to. And I believe our contact information is in the chat.
Yep.
So if you have a question that you think about like 30 minutes after the presentation, which is something that I would do, send us an email and we'd be happy to answer it via email too.
Yep, I've added all of your contact information to the chat.
You know, nice. What I'll tell you, the thing I fear the most is that we click stop presenting, and when it goes back to the screen, there's like no one left. Because I would just assume that would be the case.
Yeah, Christine had to jump off, so she did text me and apologized. But
oh, it's all good. Yeah.
But everybody, I can't say if they're all still awake, but they are all still here.
I see a lot of videos off.
I'm still here.
Oh, Trevor's back.
I'm still here too.
All right, here we go. Oh, the party's coming back.
They're waving goodbye back. To you, Hans.
Oh, this is yeah. All right, that's awesome.
So one of the things that you all never say about yourselves is, yes, you can hire a privacy attorney. Yes, you can go to one of these generators online, but Termageddon actually does all of that for you. So you all never turn your talks into sales pages. I will go ahead and say that I absolutely 100% enjoy being a customer, because having your privacy policies on my site means I don't have to think about it again. So it's on WP Coffee Talk. You all gifted us a subscription for underrepresented in tech.com, and we really appreciate that. So as one of our in-kind donors, yeah. So you know, it took me about, okay, so I'm gonna admit I am a techie, and you all know that. But the first time I went to do it, I was just like, I just don't get it. And so I was sitting at a table with Hans, and he walked me through the whole thing in Miami earlier this year. We had a great conversation, and he's like, see, Michelle, see how easy it really is? And I'm like, yes, I do. No, I do. And so when I went to set it up on the next website, I was like, I got this. And I did. And it literally took less than 10 minutes to do it all from start to finish. And that was only because I was double checking all my steps along the way to make sure that it was the same as I had on my other site. So there you go.
No, that's great. Yeah, I love walking people through the questionnaire, because I know this stuff is very foreign, you know, to a lot of people. But what I really try to do is get people to kind of understand the very basics of how it all starts, which is what's called data mapping. And I love to share an example, which is when someone fills out a contact form, does it trigger an email send where you receive the lead details? Yes. Okay, that means you're sharing data with email service providers. Does a backup get stored in WordPress of a form submission? Oh yeah. Okay, that means you're sharing data with content management systems, aka WordPress. Do you add the email to a newsletter subscription? Okay, then you're sharing data with email marketing providers. So just that one example shows how the personal information from just a simple contact form submission spreads out, it balloons into sharing it with multiple sources. And that was the stuff I didn't understand as an agency owner. I was like, I just build the contact form, you know, send it to this address. And usually WordPress doesn't send it correctly. So I have to set up like a third-party SMTP or whatever it is. And, you know, but
and your
you know, now that it's dawned on me, I like sharing that fact. Your
price point is affordable. I think it's $99 a year per site. And that's just like, it's really a no-brainer. So, I mean, anyway, I do realize that there are people who are bootstrapping enough that becomes a burden, but for the most part, that's really something. Protecting privacy, protecting yourself from being sued, your customers protecting themselves from being sued, it's 100% worth it.
And I want to,
we offer a free license for agencies too. So if you're an agency or a freelancer, we do give you a free setup policy so you can like test it out, see if you like it, get your own site protected.
And if you are a non-agency, let us know. We'll hook you up with something special. Like we're not, WordPress this is my giving back to the community, is education. And it's very nice of you to mention Termageddon, Michelle, but I actually get a little uncomfortable hearing it, because like
that's why I say it instead of you.
That's very nice of you. It doesn't, nonetheless, makes me really uncomfortable. My heart skips a little bit.
It's okay.
What matters the most to me is education, because I think we as a community have to come together to understand, like, whether we like it or not, this is happening. And like, you know, when we meet with privacy attorneys and certified information privacy professionals at the IAPP events, you know, we sit with them and they're like, what the hell's going on? Like, everyone's freaking out. Like, what is going on? How are small businesses going to keep up with this? So
but
like,
at the end of the day,
these groups, we just try to bring off a pinch of that to just kind of educate people. Like, this is what we see every single day. So, because we track it, obviously.
But at the end of the day, chicken feed isn't free. So you do have to pay the bills. So it's okay to mention it.
The bills have been paid, though. We're not, you know, we'd much rather educate.
Those chickens eat a lot.
I do actually have chickens, coincidentally.
So. I know. Chickens and bees. Marianne, did you have your hand up? You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Well, I just have to say that you guys gave a license away at a WordCamp this year, and I won one of them.
Oh, nice.
And I've been using it, and it's so great because it has opened me to really talk to some of my clients about it. And the last client I just finished up with, like, I basically forced them to get a real privacy and they bought a Termageddon license. But I said, listen, you need to talk to your lawyers about it. This is important. And it wasn't on their radar at all, because they're like a business to business company. And I was like, it doesn't matter. You're taking this data in, you got to do it. So I was like, thank you for that, because it helped me really learn what I needed to be telling clients. So
that's great. That's great. We're an email away if you ever want to like go over specific questions or anything like that. You know, we always preface it that we're not legal attorneys, but we're happy to walk through the questionnaire and everything.
And just for the record, Marianne is an affiliate. I'm an affiliate. So if you are thinking about making a purchase, hit one of us up so we make a little something too.
I have a link to your blog too. The blog and my affiliate link is on my website.
There you go. See? Okay, so I'm not that good. Go to Marianne's.
Does anyone have any like specific questions that, you know, over the stuff that we went through in the presentation? Jim?
Sure. Unmute yourself, Jim.
You're on mute.
So within WordPress, it has the ability to generate a privacy policy. How good or bad is that?
Yeah, so one of the people that's on the WordPress privacy contributors, her name is Ryan Kinney. You can always contact the WordPress privacy team on their Slack channel, and they'll tell you that the point of the WordPress privacy policy that they provide to you is not to comply with any privacy laws. It's to raise the awareness of the fact that you need a privacy policy page. So essentially the page is there so that people are aware that there are privacy laws that require websites that collect PII to have a privacy policy. I personally love WordPress. I've been a contributor during contributor days and gone to many WordCamps. If you look at the privacy policy that they provide to you, some of it is titles only. So there's no body text. It's just a title. And the privacy policy doesn't ask you what privacy laws you need to comply with. And when you write a privacy policy, the very, very first step that you need to figure out is what privacy laws apply to you. Because at that point, you see the privacy laws that apply to you. The next step is you read through all of those and see what disclosures they require in a privacy policy. So a privacy law will specifically tell you your privacy policy needs to disclose X, Y, Z. So without knowing what privacy laws apply to you, you can't have a privacy policy that works for you, right? So unfortunately, the privacy policy that WordPress provides does not comply with any privacy laws.
Earlier you made the statement, you had the chart, you know, of all the different states and where they are, and you made the comment that, you know, it's for the recipients of, you know, or the people who are viewing your website. So, you know, I'm here in New York. Does that mean all I'm interested in are the New York laws, or I have to really fundamentally, if I peel back all the layers of the onion, I have to be looking at complying to every law around the world.
Sure. So when it comes to privacy laws, it's about whose PII you're collecting, where you do business, and who you do business with, right? So let's take into account CalOPA, California's privacy law. That will apply to any website that collects the PII of California residents. So that's everyone, right? Pretty much. WordPress's privacy policy doesn't comply with CalOPA. Then let's look at GDPR, European Union's privacy law. That will apply to anyone that offers goods or services to European Union residents and anyone that tracks the behavior of European Union residents online. So if you have analytics, you're under point number 2. However, there are some websites out there that have no forms, that have no analytics, and that don't offer goods or services over there. So then that wouldn't apply. So some privacy laws apply to for-profits. Some privacy laws don't care about your for-profit status. So it's a lot more complicated than that. So you have to answer essentially a series of questions to figure out what privacy laws actually apply to you. But when you look at it from a very general standpoint, yes, it's about whose PII you're collecting, where you're doing business, who you're doing business with. So it can be very broad. It can be slightly less broad. It's very specific to your business and how you do business. So you have to keep track of all of it, yes, but you might not have to comply with every single one. Out of 10, you might need to comply with 9 Or if you're a nonprofit, you might need to comply with one. And that's the issue with WordPress's privacy policy, is it doesn't help you figure out what you need to comply with. So you don't know what disclosures you need. So you can't just comply with every single privacy law out there, because that would take a lot of operational costs if you don't need to comply. So step one is figuring out what you need to comply with. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, I think it just sounds like it's lawyers trying to figure out a way to keep generating income.
Well, what else are we gonna do?
Yeah.
We have no hobbies.
That's right.
You know, it's interesting though, from what we see in terms of these bills being proposed, it's actually consumers that are fighting for this. Consumers fighting for a right to their privacy. Now, it's going to make lawyers very rich. That's for sure, because
litigation lawyers.
Yeah,
us transactional guys are going to be down at the pits fighting for the last cent.
But okay, a niche of lawyers will be off very well. But yeah, you know, it's interesting, because I think to a large degree we come off as the bearers of bad news, when in reality we're just reactionary to whatever's being created requiring small businesses to comply. You know, we find ourselves more so being fighters for the small business, and that's been running through my blood for 35 years now. So, you know, I think you're right. There will be opportunity that comes from this, financially speaking, for certain groups to make a lot of money. But in the same breath, it's like people are getting a right to their privacy, and I don't think that's something to just skirt to the side and think of it as an unnecessary thing. I think that's something worth fighting for as well.
Mm.
All right. I
We have
think
Steve.
Steve's got a question.
Sure, I'm
Yep.
calling on Steve, but I was muted the whole time. Sorry, Steve.
Okay. So I'm working on my church's website, and they have a payment gateway for doing the weekly payroll, you know, payments and donations, etc. All that's on my page though is just a link. So how responsible am I for that versus the actual collecting of the information? And they have a dialogue, a form that's displayed, but it's on their site. It's not locally. And I guess this also goes along with how Give works, maybe the same way. Basically, not sure what the responsibility, who's responsible for that.
Sure. So I think point number one that I'd like to make is any website that you build, make sure that it doesn't collect credit card information itself. Like, use third-party payment processors, because if your client is the one collecting credit card information, you're going to need to implement a lot of compliance work, and it's not going to be worth it. So make sure you're using payment gateways. Now, when it comes to linking to another website that collects all of that payment information, you know, you'd want to, that would be more of a terms of service thing. So it's not unheard of for people to get into trouble for having a third-party link that people use and then, you know, end up getting a virus or end up getting their information stolen. And then the person goes back to their original website saying, you know, I went through your website to get there. So in that case, I would probably recommend having a terms of service that says that, you know, any links that we provide are third-party links. We don't, we're not responsible for what happens on these websites. We don't control what's happening on these websites. You should read those websites' privacy policies and terms of service. And that's, the rest of it is on you. So if you are using like a third-party payment processor, I would definitely recommend having a terms of service that says that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else, or are we all just falling asleep now?
I have a question. If I don't want any action in Europe, how much attention do we have to pay to GDPR?
I ask that question every single day.
We've had so many arguments about
We've had arguments about it. Like, this is the stuff we like battle out, not like, you know, anything else, but like privacy law discussions. Because it irritates me so much that small business owners who aren't even necessarily targeting but they are targeting, but they're not targeting.
All right, why don't you let me just answer the question before you go on your tirade
Okay,
here.
sorry, go ahead.
Here's
the
answer. Okay, just let me answer the question.
You're like reading a recipe where like at the beginning it gives you like a 30-page explanation as to why this cake is so special. Just get to the recipe. All right, so GDPR will apply to anyone that offers goods or services to EU residents or that track the behavior of EU residents online. Just because your website is accessible to somebody in Europe doesn't mean that you need to comply with GDPR. But,
excellent.
So tracking the behavior of EU residents, any website that has analytics installed technically tracks the behavior of EU residents because somebody from the EU could go on that website and be tracked. So essentially that will lump up most websites with GDPR compliance. Now there's two solutions there. One is become GDPR compliant and just be done with it. Two is actually three options. Two, turn off analytics. So if any of your clients are not using the data that comes with their analytics, like they've never seen it, they don't care what it is, they don't know what it is, turn it off because it's not being used anyway. Or you can try to use a privacy-focused analytics service. You're doing this message privately. Okay. So there's a couple like analytics services that don't collect IP address, which is the main issue when it comes to GDPR. So yeah, plausible.io or usefathom.com. We're not like affiliated with any of these, but it might be something good to look into because if you're using an analytics service, you might still get the data and the reports that you need, but then you wouldn't have to comply with GDPR necessarily. So if you want to avoid it, you could use an analytics service like that. So unfortunately, a lot of websites get lumped into GDPR compliance because of the use of analytics. So, I mean, that's an issue that some companies are trying to solve.
So, yeah, because, I mean, the fact is another component is that you have to get consent for people to be tracked. Therefore, those annoying cookie pop-ups
and all that jazz.
So, yeah, I'm very interested in monitoring the startup companies that are fighting back and like not requiring users to accept those terrible cookie notices, rather launch websites where you're thinking privacy in mind and not putting tracking systems that are collecting personal information on the website in the first place. So those two examples, plausible.io and usefathom.com, I forget which one, but like one of them is like $6 a month. And for anyone who's like, oh, $6 a month, that's so much more than Google because Google's free and awesome to me. Like I always remind myself whenever I think that, because I naturally think it too, but I always remind myself when you're paying nothing for the product, that means you are the product. And like that's how Google became what they became, because people are mentally like, okay, I'm not going to pay $6 a month. I'm going to instead get free because that just sounds so much better. When $6 a month could possibly mean that every single one of your users doesn't have to have a cookie consent pop-up, annoying them right when they visit your website. To me, that's easily worth $6. Now, granted, when you go to termageddon.com, you're going to see we have a cookie pop-up right now, but that's just because I haven't implemented this yet. I can't wait to implement this.
Well, we actually use our analytics.
We do use our analytics, but I'm gonna test out plausible for sure
for our own
website. Here we go.
You slay me, Terry.
So speaking of analytics, if 99% of the time, no, 100% of the time, put analytics on my clients' websites. They don't always care, but I care because I do. So would that mean that I'm then responsible for, I got to put the cookie collection thing on their website because I added analytics to their website? I tell them, but they don't always care about the data. Most of them don't care about the data. So that's my question.
Yeah, it's a good one. I would say about 90. I would say 95% plus of my clients when I was building websites had no idea I was installing analytics and had no idea what it would have meant even if I told them. So I'm with you on that. And it kind of dawned on me like, okay, so I'm implementing all these tools that are tracking people potentially from all over the world, and they might have to comply with multiple privacy laws. and they don't even really care that much about having it. There, I can definitely say, like, it seems like something you're going to want to peel back the onion and get to a solution, because it's like, it's either we pretend it doesn't exist and then wait 5 years for someone to get hit, or we acknowledge that it exists and think of ways to be productive in communicating the importance of privacy policies and the fact that analytics is a good thing. That's why it's installed in the first place. It helps us improve your asset, which is your online exposure on your website. So, you know, for the people who are like, we'll just turn off analytics. Well, then I would argue, no, there needs to be a good discussion of the importance of analytics, because it's a great thing. And just so you know, with our web agency partner program, I guess I will put a plug in here, but you don't have to use Termageddon for it. But once you register, we give you a waiver that you can have your clients sign. It's free. And you can even just remove the mentioning of Termageddon. If you decide not to want to work with us, that's fine. You still utilize the waiver for your clients, and just get it acknowledged that you had the discussion with them about privacy policies and the growing importance of them. The fact that they're currently required and they're becoming even that much more necessary.
Okay. So I'm thinking of sending out a mass email now to everyone. Maybe I should have the conversations privately with them, but maybe I'm just going to send out a mass email saying, I'm going to have this conversation with you, since I haven't done it for anyone yet.
Yeah, we provide a pre-written email as well, so that you can just send, you know, educational material, and obviously word it to whatever you wish. But, you know, we understand that web agencies do not get into the web. None of us got into WordPress for privacy law compliance. Like, the fact that all of you are here still is just mind-boggling to me, to be honest. But you're here and you're willing to give it the time of day, and it's just, you know, it's now just time to execute. Like, it's, you know, just don't let this be the thing that bites you in the butt 2 years from now, is my thought. So
thanks. Okay.
Anyone else?
And if anybody thinks of questions later too, our contact information is in the chat, so you can always chat us as well.
Perfect.
I'll ask a quick, oh, go ahead, Trevor.
So mine is not privacy related, but as a science fiction geek, I know I should recognize the wall behind you, but I just can't place it.
Think about, what is it called? Roentgens. No?
No.
Wait, Roentgens is a physics thing, isn't it?
Roentgens?
Yeah.
Roentgens, the unit of radioactivity?
Yeah. Show, TV show, popular.
Well, it's not science fiction.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Chernobyl. So it was.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
Okay.
That TV series. Yeah, that's where the idea came from.
But I do you mind stepping aside just for a second? I always wanted to tell people during these calls that Termageddon's powered by this thing. So like, and I don't have the guts to say it, but like mid conversation, I just want to be like, hold on 1 second, we're getting another subscriber, and I just whack the screen button, and then the screen turns on and like starts running code and stuff. And but I haven't.
A nuclear meltdown happened.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we haven't gotten that far. We have the panel, you know, the prop.
Yeah.
It's a prop now, but soon it will be a tool.
Nice. Thank you.
Of course. Mike, what's up?
I was going to ask if you gave any thought to password protected websites. Can you circumvent a lot of this and just say, hey, here's the deal. By signing in, we give you a password, you just agree to this stuff, and you indemnify us from this? Have you given any thought to that sort of a setup?
I mean, would the person register and then, or is it just a password? Like you just password protect it?
Well, we would just have a description of the site and just say, hey, here it is. If you want in, you have to agree to these terms. It's password protected until you agree. And then,
you know, I've probably talked to 3,000 people. I have not gotten that one.
Oh, people have tried that with GDPR. It was great. So the cookie consent thing, people tried to make you agree to cookies so that you could visit the website itself. So like there's a pop-up and you couldn't see the rest of the site. You had to agree to it. Yeah, European Data Protection Supervisor shut that down real fast. Yeah, that was a quick one. I think if that was a valid way to circumvent privacy laws, Facebook and Google would have done it. I'll put it that way.
That's interesting.
So it just, that stuff doesn't work. You know, people say like, oh, well, what if in the form I'll say, oh, people from California can't submit this form, stuff like that. It just doesn't work. I mean, it's just trying to circumvent it.
So if a website did not collect IP upon visiting and you selected where you're a resident of, and you could get in if you selected where you're a resident of.
But I could just select whatever. I mean, I don't have to select the right country.
Yeah, but at that point, you clearly well, oh yeah, because you wouldn't be able to track back to them. If
you couldn't show that they consented in the first place, and then also when you go to court as a consumer, you get like a free pass to do whatever you want because they just assume you're stupid.
Mike, I don't know if we can think if that's good or not.
I appreciate you considering it. What I'm really trying to do is just to filter out the trolls so they're not worth their effort, right? So if you really want in, you're going to make an effort. You're going to exchange a little information. When they first arrive at the site, we're not taking anything. We would disclose that. Hey, we're not taking any of your information, but if you're going to come in and buy, you know, and then you do your privacy policy, it seems like a headache. And I don't know that that's really a viable thing for a lot of websites, but some of these other more special niche oriented ones, they really are, especially like supply chain stuff. And I can see applications, and you don't really want these lawyers trolling around anyway, right? So anyway, it was just something.
Yeah, but could that then make you a target for lawyer trolling in the first place? Like the people who had the incorrect cookie consent pop-ups, like that really made people angry, and that's when they complained, you know? So.
Well, sure, but at some point you get to run your business, don't you? I mean, ultimately your. You know, if you're going to be sharing information because they're interested in buying wholesale quantities or parts for their stove they're making or whatever, right? You're dealing with a select, and you want to kind of pre-qualify those people anyway. You don't want to give wholesale pricing for products that are going to retail. But I'm getting a little off the subject there. I thought that might have been something that had come up and you contemplated, and I realized there's no definitive answer as the laws change. It's like, and I can understand why the consumers are. Because under consumer protection laws, they award attorney fees. They're automatic, right? So that's why they all like that. But I think there's an argument on both sides. There's an argument that the consumer should be protected, right? And then there's an argument that there are people that are less than savory that will take advantage of the system. It's
100% a byproduct of consumer protection. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I think is unfortunately going to be the result if some of these bills do get passed. Is I think small business owners are going to be at risk of frivolous ambulance chasing type lawsuits. But in the same breath, it's like, it all comes back to like, all right, this is a fight for privacy. And although you may, as individuals, we all have our own different opinion on privacy, but like, man, this does kind of feel like that thing you have until it's gone. Like you don't know what you have until it's gone type vibe I get when I think about privacy. Like, what's it going to be like when we have no privacy? So I think, you know, whether we like it or not, the fight is occurring for privacy laws. I would say the thing to consider when talking about password protecting sites in an effort to combat privacy law compliance is the cost to your business of not having the exposure that one might seek. So obviously you're right, with a niche and you have a very clear focus, like maybe 100 potential prospects in total could possibly buy your stuff. Then comes the question, well, are you already soliciting these 100 people, or are you like hoping they find you still from search engines? Because I was sitting there thinking, well, what if you disallow all search engines, you know, password protect it? And I feel like I could eventually get to some sort of thing where your website isn't collecting personal information. But when it's all said and done, it's just like, okay, how far away are we stepping from what you're trying to do with your, like with a business, especially?
But the moment you collect the PII from one of these 100 leads, the privacy laws will start applying anyway. So you'll still need to do all that stuff.
It's true.
Well, it's not that you're trying to avoid the privacy protection thing, which I think is important. And I think every website has a certain duty. And this is where your service is actually kind of valuable in my mind, because people that don't understand that can at least have they can show intent, right? They can, you know, they may not be perfect, but it's like all the little guys has to be absolutely perfect, and everybody in government, they don't have to be, right? Yeah. Those lawyers can lie in court all day long, and there's no perjury. And so having a service like yours, I thank you, and I thank you for bringing it to everybody's, so they don't get blindsided by this stuff. But I'm looking at little niche situations here, different people with different needs. But it's not the intent to circumvent the privacy issue. I don't think abusing and stealing people's data, you know, yeah, they deserve to get a swift boot. Right?
A big issue too is like we have consumer protection, but we don't have consumer education. So like a very large percentage of American consumers think that businesses should ask for your consent before they share your PII. Which, like, when you ask that question, sure, like that totally makes sense. But when you think about it in a practical application, I go to an online store, I purchase shoes, my address needs to be shared with UPS to ship those shoes to me. So like consumers don't understand, like they think that sharing is just like automatically so horrible. But in reality, they rely on sharing to get like the basic service that they purchase, but nobody makes that connection for them. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding from consumers about how the internet works and like what it means to purchase products or services online. And they're pushing for all of these laws that give them all of these rights, but they don't really understand what those rights are or what they mean. You know, and I think that's a huge issue when it comes to compliance in the privacy space, is you have a lot of people who don't understand how the internet works, either making the rules or pushing for the rules.
I certainly take that point, and that you know, who's going to crawl through these lawsuits and legislation that, you know, even the politicians don't understand what they're passing half the time. But I would like to draw a comparison to you go to, you know, I don't know, Home Depot or something, or Walmart, and you sign up for loyalty rewards cards and stuff where they track your data. They don't have a privacy policy thing, or do they?
Yeah,
it seems like the standard is for the little, I'm sorry?
They will email it to you or give it to you in like a welcome booklet.
Where they'll say, you agree to our policies, and there'll be like 10 pages of stuff no one can read.
Yeah.
Like Facebook or Google.
Yeah, yeah.
But to give them the benefit of the doubt, the reason why it's 10 pages, it's not because they want, well, maybe I assume they don't want to just bore you to death into submission into not reading it.
That's exactly what it is. That's why I write mine the way I write mine.
No, I think it has to do with the fact that they are required to disclose these specific things, and the list gets exhaustive the bigger you get. But I'll tell you, we were at Hobby Lobby like, I don't know, a year ago, back when we could go outside. And we went to the front, like right when we entered, there was this like podium to enter your email address.
Oh yeah.
And that was like the first time I was like, okay, this doesn't feel right. Like there was a list of emails of all these people's emails, and I was like number 50 to fill in the sheet. And I'm like, I could easily just walk out the door with this. I could do so much with what I'm looking at.
Yeah, just snap a photo of all those emails.
Yeah, snap a photo. You got your leads. You know, you already know that you know their niche is crafts. You can run ads to them. So I don't know. I think as time goes on, more people become more appreciative of privacy.
Business idea. Sell random lists that you find in random stores.
Yeah, eventually the laws will get codified, right? Eventually, I'd really like to see it. I think you alluded to this a little earlier, that we don't have a one. It really should be on the Commerce Clause. It should be, you know, when you're doing business from state to state, you shouldn't have to worry about all these. It's just wrong.
That's what Europe did. I mean, they created one set of rules for all the countries to follow, and it went fine.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, we can't have nice things here. So,
so I gotta say, like, I'm proud to say, like, you know, if things just take a U-turn and like the federal government comes out with one privacy law and hopefully even a generator, like we'll be out of business. But honestly, like we stood our course.
No, here's the big issue.
We stood
I think even if they there'll still be interpretations. They'll still need your service. I believe.
Maybe, yeah.
I guess you were saying it like, oh, it simplifies everything, that we can get to a solution that's less messy, right? But I think there's always going to be a need for your services, because most websites, most people want to act in a decent manner. They don't want to just ignore it. It's not convenient. Nobody wants to deal with lawyers, or I get that. But, you know, there's a reason. There is a legitimate reason for this type of stuff, that people should take it serious. And so the service you provide it's worthy. And if nothing else, the education that you provide. because you're one of the only. I've talked to 2 or 3, but this is probably my 4th now or 3rd one where you guys have at least one or usually Hans, but I've seen you both in a couple 3, and I appreciate it. It's not fun, but it's, you know.
I don't have the same outfit on every time, do I?
Oh,
I have the same outfit on. Like I cycle through only like 4 outfits a week at this point in time. So
no, I didn't see that. But are you showering now that with the lockdown?
I am showering. Yeah.
Every 2 weeks.
Every Sunday. Yep. Just a good old shower, just like the olden times. You know, draw a hot bath with hot water.
The chickens.
1900s. Yeah. So.
Anything else on privacy, or can we let Hans and Donata go to dinner?
Well, I mean, we only had to go upstairs. It's no, you know.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, what's up?
Sure.
Okay, you're familiar with the plugins, WordFence, or the security plugins. When you go on my site, if you come from Turkey, Iran, China, Russia, and a few others, you're banned because that's where all the hackers come. I use all-in-one WP security. It checks your IP. If it's on from those countries, you get redirected to a nasty site that I won't tell you. And if you're from the US, UK, most other countries, nice countries, you get the site. Is that a violation of the whole privacy thing technically? Because it's analyzing your IP. And you need to, the same thing when you leave a comment on any WordPress site, the administrator of that site has the IP address, your email, you know, the standard comment form, you know, Are those 2 situations?
Yeah, I mean, if you're collecting IP addresses, you know, there might be privacy laws that apply to you. So, you know, it really, when it comes to, how do I phrase this? When it comes to countries of which you don't want the visitors of, right? So let's take Russia, right? At a certain point, you have to decide which privacy laws you want to comply with. So just because a privacy law may apply to you doesn't mean that you necessarily want to comply with that privacy law. It all depends on your risk. And things like that. But if your website is collecting IP address, you know, then you do want to consider having a privacy policy, especially if that IP address is shared with parties that prevent malicious conduct.
No, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great question too, because it's like a chicken or the egg, which came first type question. So it's a tough one. Very interesting.
Yeah, but again, if anybody thinks of any questions afterwards, our emails are in the chat, and you can always email us too. We're happy to help.
Well, thank you all for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So are you you're in Illinois, not Minnesota, or were you
Illinois?
Yeah. Chicago.
Illinois. Chicago. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Mike, I'll probably see you in a few weeks or something.
We'll do this again soon.
Everyone else, it's a pleasure.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for being here. We still have a little over half an hour left. If anybody has any specific questions or general questions about WordPress in general, or anything about your website, or
I'm scared now.
Anybody experience the hiccup with SiteGround the other day?
I'm not using them anymore.
What happened? Because I've been kind of offline all weekend. What happened?
Well, it was just they were switching over from cPanel to their site panel, and it was happening on December 3rd, I think, and on December 2nd, Kathy went in to make some edits, and we couldn't get logged in. They had a CAPTCHA or whatever you call it set up, and every time you entered the thing, it just would loop and loop and loop, and they basically locked down, most of their customers' websites. I guess they had a brute force attack that they were trying to stop. That's what they told me. But I contacted them, and you know, and they removed it so we could get into our edits. But you know, the other thing with SiteGround is, you know, I used to call them up and they'd answer the phone and and fix the question, and we'd say thank you very much, and you know, 2 minutes later I was on my way. Oh my God! You know, now you got to go through their phone tree, and you got to go get a temporary access code, and you can't find the temporary access code on the website. I mean, it's a cluster trying to get support. But you know, once you get to somebody, then they take care of you. But I was not I was not a happy camper.
Yeah, there's been increasing problems I'm with SiteGround. I got about maybe 5 sites there, and speeds are slowing down a little bit. Service is not as easy. I've been dreading this moving from cPanel. I don't think they want to pay for it, but yeah, it's I don't know how long I'm going to stay. They're still pretty good though for most sites, but yeah, I know what you're alluding to there. I think what happened is a part of it is they just became so popular. After a while, they just overloaded their servers, and you got those shared environments, and I think they're taking a performance hit.
Well, that and probably a personnel hit. I mean, that growth. I mean, it's hard to train people.
Yeah, they're out of Belarus or somewhere. They're out of the. So, it may not be Belarus.
No,
but
they're in
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, Sofia, Bulgaria.
Yeah.
So who are you using now,
I think
Michelle?
one of the One of the problems that they had is because they sponsor almost every single WordCamp out there. They're always there, and yeah, they got too popular. And when you get too popular, all of a sudden you have problems maintaining your systems. No matter what hosting company you are, you know.
Right.
They took market share,
and I moved out of them this morning.
Oh, you left SiteGround this morning?
Yeah, I started the process about 27 sites to something else. I'm not going back. I'm sorry.
Well, that sure sounds like fun. 27 sites.
Yes.
All right. Well.
Oh my God! Was it a pain in my head?
Oh God.
How do you do that? Don't your customers? I mean, are those all your sites, or don't your customers have to move? Or are they coming through you?
I have 4 cats and about 12 birds. Each of them have their own site. Yes, I know.
Okay.
I'm using Sentry now, Jim, to answer your question.
And where are they located?
West Virginia. They're managed WordPress hosting, so they're a little more expensive, but they do all of your plugin updates and all of your security for you on the site. So they're now hosting all of my sites. I do work for them also. I am their head of marketing for them, in addition to what I do at Give. So I have a vested interest in what happens there. So I'm always transparent with you guys about that. You know that. But I appreciate the work that they do. And because I know them personally, whenever any of my friends have an issue, I just ping them and say, hey, can you look at this for so-and-so? Which is also nice. Marianne has actually moved all of her sites over there. And Amanda Gorman has moved all of her sites over there because they've been so responsive and are so easy to work with. And they actually migrate your site for you. So you don't have to worry about figuring out how to migrate your site from SiteGround to Sentry. They will take care of all of that. They've moved all my sites, and they scan for malware every single time before they upload a site to their servers. So not to make a little commercial out of it, but since you asked, that's exactly where I am.
They have shared servers as well. Is it a similar setup to SiteGround?
It's a little bit different. They're using, I think they're using Cloudways servers for what they're doing. So, and the way they have it partitioned though, it's not shared server space between the different sites.
So Michelle, they do all the maintenance. You don't have to ever do maintenance for your customers anymore?
That's correct.
I'm curious, when you say managed hosting, what maintenance does that include? I'm just curious.
Yep, so they do all of the updates to all of your plugins and WordPress, as well as maintaining backups and running the security on your site.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'll put the, I won't put my, I'll just put the regular link in here. If anybody is interested in my affiliate link, I'll share that with you one-on-one. I try not to because I know so many people in WordPress, I try not to spam. Here, I'll make it actually linkable. Spam you guys with my affiliate links, but I do have them available if you're interested. So, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that you might have about them. So, and you can free trial with them too. So you can have your site moved over, experience how it works, and then make a decision after that.
Do they do automatic privacy policies?
They do not do automatic privacy policies, but they'll include
I
believe they include the SSL certificates though, because they've never asked me for any login or anything for SSL. So they've got your SSL covered. Although most other places do too, but most of the places you have to enable it yourself, as opposed to they're just automatically enabling it for you.
Are they the company that they host anybody and everybody except physics website?
I heard that used to be true, but they're branching out now and helping physicists as well. Trevor, the person I talked to earlier, the one I told you I was fangirling about.
Yes.
She is a physicist who has this year was named one of what's the name of that? I can't think of it. USA Today's 100 Women of the Century. She is a physicist. She's a Black woman who is, Dr. Green is her name, Hadia Nicole Green. And she has cured cancer in rats using mice using nanotechnologies.
Nice.
And she is phenomenal. I'll send you a link to her site later so you can take a look at what she's doing. But
okay,
I was just like completely in awe of this woman.
Nice.
Yeah, it made the news in April, but because we were in a pandemic, nobody knew about it. So it took a back seat. But I was just like, the pictures of the tumor shrinkage, a 10-second, I was reading all of her website before I met with her. It's a 10-second treatment. And then within 15 days, the tumor was gone on the mouse. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, a little aside, but there's my little physics connection. So bye, Trisha. Good to see you. Any other questions about anything else? I'm going to stop the recording now just because.